Welcome to Mr. Hutchings History, where the past comes alive. Let's dive into today's story.
Okay, so, ready to dive into something interesting?
Always.
All right, well, today's deep dive is asking, was Martin Luther King Jr. overrated? Yeah, I know, right? Hear me out before you hit that unsubscribe button.
I'm intrigued, I won't lie.
Good, because we're not here to trash MLK. This is about understanding social movements, how they really work.
Right, like it's rare one person deserves all the credit for anything big, you know?
Exactly. And our source for this is an episode from Mr. Hutchings History called 24, The Legacy of Martin Luther King.
Interesting. So where do we even start with a question like that?
Well, we got to start with the Montgomery Bus Boycott, right? In 1955, everyone knows Rosa Parks.
Yeah, refusing to give up her seat on that bus. Pivotal moment.
But get this, MLK, he was young then, right? Still finding his footing as a pastor. He was actually chosen to lead the Montgomery Improvement Association, the MIA.
The MIA.
Right.
Formed specifically because of the boycott.
Exactly. And while Parks was the spark, the boycott itself, that's what forced change.
And they needed a leader. Someone who could really speak for everyone, articulate their anger, their hopes.
And MLK, with that voice of his, that presence, he fit the bill.
Absolutely. But it makes you think, right? His leadership, it wasn't a given.
So he just happened to be the right guy at the right time.
In a way, yeah. Professor Clayborne Carson, he studied the movement extensively.
Okay.
He said MLK often benefited from movements he did not initiate.
Whoa.
Now, hold on. That doesn't mean MLK didn't matter, but it challenges the whole he did it all narrative.
So are we saying he was just a figurehead, a good speaker they pushed out front?
Not that simple.
Yeah.
Keeping the boycott going, that took real leadership, getting national support. It was crucial he was there.
It's like, imagine a band, right? The lead singer gets all the attention.
Sure.
But without the band, the instruments, the groove, that singer's nothing.
Love the analogy. MLK was the voice, but the movement, that was the whole band. And speaking of which,
Yeah.
that energy didn't just disappear after Montgomery. This was the start. Sit-ins, freedom rides.
Huge moments.
And those weren't really MLK's doing either, were they?
Oh, you're talking about the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the SNCC.
Exactly. Freedom rides, those were mostly them.
Yeah.
Interracial groups, riding buses, facing down the worst of it.
So brave.
Right. Risking their lives to expose just how bad segregation was.
It's both inspiring and terrifying to think about.
Totally. And here's the thing. MLK, he wasn't leading those charges directly.
Okay.
But he was this unifying vision, you know.
What do you mean?
Dr. Joe Street, another scholar, said MLK's speeches, his presence at marches,
Right.
he made the movement's goals clear. People connected with that all over the country.
So if these other groups were the ones actually doing the risky stuff, what was MLK's role then?
He amplified it, gave it a voice that could reach everyone. Think, I have a dream at the March on Washington.
Such a powerful speech.
Right. That march, huge show of force organized by a bunch of groups.
Yeah.
But it's MLK's words everyone remembers.
It makes you wonder, you know, we focus so much on these big speeches, these individual moments.
But history's never that simple, is it?
Right. It's like you were saying, those group projects. One person takes the stage.
Exactly. But someone had to gather the info, put it all together.
The unsung heroes of the bibliography. And in the civil rights movement, talk about unsung heroes.
Sons.
John Lewis, freedom rides, risked everything. Diane Nash, brilliant strategist, the sit-ins, and Bayard Rustin.
The March on Washington, he was the organizational genius behind it.
But overlooked for so long.
Yeah.
Because he was gay. In those times, forget it. It makes you realize we're barely scratching the surface.
That's the thing about focusing on individual heroes. It hides how movements really work.
Yeah, and that's especially true when you look at MLK. Not the early years, but after 1965, after the Civil Rights Act.
It's like history class ends there, but it shouldn't.
Right. Segregation's outlawed, so what does he do? Tackles poverty, economic inequality.
The Poor People's Campaign, 1968.
Yeah.
Trying to build this massive coalition, poor folks of all races.
Demanding change, and he's connecting it all, right? Racial equality, economic justice.
Saying you can't have one without the other. Gets to the root of the problem.
And let's not forget, he comes out swinging against the Vietnam War.
Beyond Vietnam, that speech, powerful.
Links the war to poverty, to militarism. This wasn't just about civil rights anymore. This was challenging the whole system.
And that's what's so interesting. This later MLK, so radical, so much bigger, often gets ignored.
Yeah, like we're more comfortable with the easier victories.
Maybe. Or maybe it's because this later activism, it challenged people more, even within the movement.
He was pushing boundaries, no doubt. Makes you think we love those who fight for change until they shake things up too much.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Admire the rebels, but only if they play by some rules.
Exactly. And that brings us back, doesn't it? Was MLK overrated?
$1,000,000 question.
Yeah.
No denying his impact was huge, but understanding how leadership really works, that means looking at the whole picture.
Right.
Like Professor Carson said, MLK, he was the lightning rod.
Love that image, channeling all that energy, but...
He wasn't the storm itself. That was brewing long before him, all those individual acts, all that rage and hope.
And it didn't just stop after him either, did it? That's the other thing.
Nope. Change never happens overnight. It's a process.
It's almost like we need that hero story, you know, makes it easier to grasp.
Makes for a better headline, that's for sure.
Right, but the internet, think about that. We say, Tim Berners-Lee, he invented it.
When really, it was decades of work. Tons of people all over.
So maybe it's not, it takes a village.
More like, it takes a movement.
Nailed it. Because movements, they're made of people, right? Those everyday heroes most of us never even hear about.
The ones working away, behind the scenes, organizing, planning, making sure the message gets out.
Those are the threads that hold it all together. And those are always the hardest to see, aren't they?
It's the speeches we remember, the big marches.
Yeah.
But all those quiet conversations.
The meetings nobody sees, the flyers someone stayed up all night making.
That's the fuel. You know?
Yeah.
Without it, the fire never catches.
It's like those group projects again.
Always comes back to that, huh?
Well, it's the perfect example. You might get the A, but someone else did all that research.
And someone else turned that research into something presentable. Everyone has their role.
And it's the same in a movement, isn't it? Each one of those roles matters.
Absolutely. You need the people on the ground and the people making sure the message reaches the right ears.
So I guess that's the big takeaway here, right? When we're looking at these movements, any of them, don't just look at who's center stage.
They're just closer. There's a whole ecosystem there working to make things happen.
And those stories, those are the ones we need to be telling. So to everyone listening, I'll leave you with this.
Go on.
What movements get you fired up? Who are the people out there working their tails off to make things better? Go find them.
Learn their stories, get inspired, because we're all part of this, you know.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's all the time we've got for today's deep dive.
Until next time, keep asking the good questions, folks.
Thanks for listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.